He was a rising star in San Antonio's hip-hop scene.
He was following in the footsteps of his cousin Beyonce.
He wanted to make a name for himself.
And with his ride or die by his side, it seemed like the sky was the limit.
She was there with him every step of the way.
Their love needed them to be together.
Until his music career started taking center stage.
He meets a new woman in the San Antonio music scene.
Their creative relationship blossomed into something more personal.
So when he's found dead, who is to blame?
This was not an accident that took his life.
The evidence points to a chilling crime committed by a killer with a grudge.
There's a power and control dynamic that's at play.
He's not responding, and I don't know what's going on.
Don't believe anything she's saying.
She was lying about the altercation.
Her last boyfriend had ended up dead.
She should have come with a warning label.
January 26, 2021, San Antonio, Texas, a once quiet mission town, has grown into the Lone Star State's second largest city.
San Antonio has somewhere in the neighborhood of 2.5 million residents. It is one of the fastest growing cities in the country.
San Antonio, for being a large city, really has a small town feel. It's very traditional, very old, and that makes it different than the other large cities in Texas.
But around 12 p.m., the city's calm is shaken when a 911 call reaches the San Antonio Police Department.
The woman said her name was Nina Edwards, and she lived out of state in Louisiana.
I'd like to report a missing person.
The caller tells police that she's concerned about her stepson, who is a 34-year-old up-and-coming rapper by the name of Martell DeRowan.
Martell lived in an apartment on the north side of San Antonio.
She tells police that they've tried to reach Martell for the last few days, and they are very concerned. They have not been able to reach him.
The last time we spoke to him was Friday.
She said nobody's heard from him. Nobody's able to get a hold of him. Here's his address. Will you please go do a welfare check to make sure he's okay?
We're really worried about him.
When police arrive at Martell's apartment, there's immediate cause for concern.
There was a hole in the door near the peephole. Their concern at that point was that it was a bullet hole. So they contacted the management and asked if maintenance could assist them with gaining entry into the apartment.
Sir! Sir!
Inside the apartment, the officers make a tragic discovery.
As soon as they opened the door, they just saw a victim laying on the floor.
Martell was lying in a pool of blood.
Despite his reserved personality, 34-year-old Martell DeRowan had a powerful presence that caught people's attention the moment they met him.
Martell was always separated from his peers by his quiet thoughtfulness that you noticed about him.
There was a quiet strength that always seemed to set him aside.
He was young, talented, intelligent, handsome, just a very, very impressive young man.
One of the most important people in Martell's life was his high school sweetheart, Gwen Anderson.
She was from his hometown of New Iberia, Louisiana.
They really connected with each other from a young age and got an apartment in San Antonio.
Their love needed them to be together.
So when Martell decided to join the military in 2004, Gwen didn't shy away.
He wanted to start a career and see the world, and that desire led him to join the military.
He enlists in the Air Force.
He was attached to an esteemed intelligence unit.
Martell was very intelligent. He had to have been to be selected to be into that career field.
However, after 6 years of service in the military, Martell decided it was time for a change.
After reaching the rank of sergeant, Martell left the Air Force and refocused his passions towards his love of music.
Martell always dabbled in music, but that was his hobby. That was his sideline.
At 34 years old, it soon became his main focus in life.
Martell was very, very talented, and he comes from a musical family.
Martell and Beyonce are cousins. They share the same maternal grandmother that she named her clothing line after, House of Darion.
Martell began to make a name for himself in his own right in the music world.
And soon, he started to gain a following of his own.
In 2016, under the name Cardone, Martell released his first album.
Over the next few years, he releases 2 other singles under the name of Cardone.
In 2019, Martell was signed by the Sony-affiliated music label, The Orchard. His hip-hop career began to take off.
But while Martell's music career was taking off, his relationship with Gwen was falling apart.
Once the decision was made for him to leave the military and now make his hobby his profession, that caused some problems.
I'm not okay with all these damn groupies trying to get with you.
She was ready to settle down and start a family, and Martell was on a completely different page. He was just getting started in his music career.
I need you to support me.
The couple's differences proved irreconcilable. And after 13 years together, they made the difficult decision to part ways.
They remained very close friends and stayed in touch with each other over the years, but they ceased being a couple.
And so he poured himself into his music, finding solace in creativity.
Through his creative outlets, Martell eventually connected with someone new.
Before long, he meets a new woman in the San Antonio music scene by the name of Sasha Scar.
Martell and Sasha hit it off very quickly.
Like Martell, Sasha was an up-and-coming young talent in the world of hip-hop.
All right, let's do it one more time. I'm gonna bring the bass up a little bit.
They met filming a video for one of Martell's songs, and he recognized that Sasha had some talent.
And in 2019, Martell helped produce Sasha's first new single.
Yo, that's perfect.
Their creative relationship blossomed into something more personal, and they began dating.
Thank you, baby.
Together, they seemed like an unstoppable musical force.
In San Antonio, Martell was already a hot commodity. And then once he started this personal relationship with Sasha, they became like the it couple in the hip hop scene.
They were young and beautiful. Their careers were taking off.
It seemed like nothing could stop them.
But now, Martell's soaring career has come crashing down when San Antonio police officers find him unresponsive on the floor of his apartment.
When the officers were able to gain entry into the apartment, the first thing they see is Martell DeRuin.
He was lying in a pool of blood.
Police attempt to provide first aid, but realize they're too late.
Martell's body is cold to the touch.
It was clear that he had been dead for some time.
It's also clear how Martell died.
This was not an accident that took his life.
It was pretty obvious that the victim had a gunshot wound to the head.
When homicide detectives arrive at Martell's apartment, they begin trying to piece together what happened.
The apartment's in disarray. Some furniture is overturned. I noticed things broken on the floor. There's dishes broken, glass broken.
There are signs of a struggle.
A struggle which carried over into Martell's bedroom.
Going back into the bedroom, I noticed that the bed is actually broken, framed from the headboard. It looked to me like there had been a pretty serious physical fight in the apartment. Something bad happened in there.
Investigators also spot an important clue inside the bedroom closet.
In the closet, They find an open container which has a 9mm magazine in it.
The gun was gone. We couldn't find it anywhere in the apartment. That was a concern.
And they wonder if this is the weapon that killed Martell.
But if Martell's killer was inside his apartment, why was he shot from outside his front door?
The only thing we found was a single gunshot through the door.
It was just odd.
By January of 2021, former Air Force intelligence specialist Martell DeRuin was making a name for himself on San Antonio's hip-hop circuit.
He was following in the footsteps of his cousin Beyonce.
Martell was also forging a relationship with another talented musician named Sasha Scar.
They were both young, they were both attractive, they were both talented.
But now, 4 days after Martell was last seen, police have found the young rapper dead on the floor of his apartment.
The victim had a gunshot wound to the head.
They made a determination pretty quickly, like, this looks like a homicide.
Detectives find clear signs of a struggle inside the apartment. So why does it appear Martell's killer shot him from outside the front door?
It appeared that he was shot while looking through the eye hole of the door of his own apartment. It was just odd that there was this violent interaction inside the apartment, and yet he was killed from the outside of the apartment.
Investigators quickly rule out robbery as a motive.
They find nothing missing in his apartment other than the handgun.
Martell's expensive music production equipment and cell phone are still in place.
There was no sign of forced entry. We knew that.
We knew that Mr. DeRuin was in the getting started in the entertainment industry, an aspiring rapper, musician. We thought about, could this be related to that?
Detectives hope that Martell's cell phone may lead them to a suspect.
The detectives turn over Martell's passcode locked cell phone to forensic analysts for processing.
And in the meantime, they start making contact with his neighbors.
When we started the canvass, the first place we knocked was the neighbor's door right across from the victim's apartment.
The neighbor tells police that he heard commotion between 10:30 and 11 Friday night.
The neighbor said Friday night, they put in an order for fast food to have it delivered. And about the time the food should be delivered, they heard some pretty heavy knocking, beating on an apartment door.
Slamming on the door, hardcore, to the point where I thought it was on my door.
Thinking that that was their food delivery, they got up and opened the door.
The neighbor says a young woman was standing outside.
She was like crying in front of the door, and I was like, "Hey, do you need something?"
The young lady basically said, no, kind of in a don't worry about what I'm doing, mind your own business type thing.
When you saw her out there, was she carrying anything, holding anything?
No, not at all.
He didn't see her with any type of gun.
So he went back inside and tried to mind his own business.
And then like maybe 20 minutes later, I heard the banging again, and like just heard some arguing at the door, and then I'm not too sure because I stopped paying attention at that point. I just turned up the volume and tried to zone it out.
He didn't want to get involved.
Detectives aren't exactly sure how yet, but they believe this mystery.
We've now established that this critical incident happened on Friday night, which would explain why the family did not hear from the victim throughout the weekend.
Down the hall from Martell's apartment, detectives discover another potential lead.
They notice an apartment that has a video doorbell on the outside.
The resident of that apartment unit didn't seem to be home.
The police knock but get no answer, so they leave a business card on the front door, asking the resident to please contact them so they may download any possible video evidence.
After completing their canvass, investigators are about to head back to the station. But before they leave, they're approached by a young woman who says she needs to speak to them.
They said, okay, who are you? And she said, I'm Gwen Anderson.
She was concerned. Can you tell me what's going on? Have you found him? Is he okay?
Gwen explains that she's Martel's ex-girlfriend, and even though they'd broken up a couple of years earlier, they'd remained close.
They were separated, but they still communicated.
She tells the police the last time she had heard from Martel was around 1:30 p.m. on Friday afternoon.
She hadn't been able to reach him in several days, so she figured she'd come and check in person.
Detectives are immediately suspicious of Gwen's story.
The fact that they had been broken up for so long and she was still showing up to his apartment, it just didn't seem right.
At this time, we didn't know who was involved, and it wouldn't be far-fetched to believe that there was some kind of dispute between her and the man she was separated from.
Could Gwen be the same woman Martel's neighbor saw outside his apartment around the time of the murder?
Knowing that the neighbor across from the victim's apartment had seen this female banging on a door, we really wanted to talk to Miss Anderson and get as much information from her as possible.
But when detectives inform Gwen that Martel is dead, she breaks down in tears.
She became so upset that they weren't really even able to continue interviewing her at the scene.
Detectives tell her to take her time, compose herself, and they'll schedule a time to speak with her at the station.
After returning to police headquarters, investigators continue poring over the case.
Check out this report from Friday night.
Police uncovered that a 911 call was placed at the apartment complex around the same time that Martel was killed.
San Antonio 911, do you need police, fire, or EMS?
I need police now.
The caller said she was afraid her ex-boyfriend had been injured.
She's standing outside, is unable to reach him, and can't get inside.
Do you hear him?
No, he's not responding. There's a hole in his door, and I don't know what's going on.
There's a hole in the door?
Yes.
And you don't have a key?
No, ma'am, I don't.
But it's what the caller says next that sends alarm bells ringing.
Okay, and your name?
She says, my name is Gwen Anderson.
Detectives investigating the murder of San Antonio rapper Martel DeRuin have just learned that a woman claiming to be his ex-girlfriend made a 911 call on the night he was killed.
I need police now.
Okay, and your name?
She says, my name is Gwen Anderson.
She claimed that she needed to have someone check in an apartment because she thought he might be hurt.
He's not responding, and there's a hole in his door, and I don't know what's going on.
But according to the report, police eventually chalked it up to a prank call.
She hangs up and refuses to pick up any of the attempts by the 911 operator to call her back.
When officers responded to that apartment complex, she was gone, nowhere to be found, so they weren't able to even check on Martel that night, which is why he was not found until that following Tuesday.
If Gwen had made the 911 call from that night, why didn't she mention it earlier?
That was very, very suspicious to the detectives.
The police are suspicious as to why Gwen Anderson failed to mention any of this. Was she trying to hide something?
But when investigators bring Gwen in to ask her about the phone call, she seems puzzled.
The detectives confronted Gwen Anderson with that information. She was very confused. She had no idea what they were talking about.
Gwen tells the detectives she did not make a 911 call.
You're telling us this is not you?
San Antonio 911, do you need police, fire, or EMS?
I need police now.
And she said, that is not me. That is not me who made that phone call. Gwen reiterated several times that there was no way that she could ever do anything to harm Martel.
Gwen admits that their relationship wasn't perfect, even before the breakup.
She tells them that, yes, there were problems in their relationship.
He was suffering from PTSD as a result of his military service. She admits that they did have arguments that turned physical.
But Gwen says they always found their way back to each other after some time apart.
But she says she was still in love with him.
She knew him inside and out. She knew that he was struggling with some mental health issues, and that didn't change the way she felt about him. They were young love. They grew up together. I think Gwen always thought that somewhere down the line there would be an opportunity for the two of them to get back together again because they were soulmates.
But is Gwen telling the truth?
The number that made the 911 call was registered to a burner phone. So at this point, they couldn't confirm or deny that Gwen made the call.
Is there anybody who can verify your whereabouts on Friday night?
No, I was at home by myself.
Detectives was suspicious of her story, but they didn't have enough evidence to keep her in custody.
However, before cutting her loose, police asked Gwen about what else was going on in Martel's life.
They ask her, do you know of any other woman that Martel has been dating lately?
He had told her that he was dating a young lady by the name of Sasha.
Her full name is Sasha Scar.
Gwen says, based on what Martel told her, he and Sasha were having serious issues in their relationship.
Martel would share with her the fact that this relationship with Sasha was pretty stressful. They would fight and argue quite a bit. And I think he even mentioned to her before that he was want to get out of that relationship.
At that point, detectives shift their attention to Martel's new girlfriend, Sasha.
And when detectives plug Sasha's name into their police database, they make an alarming discovery.
Miss Sasha is out on bond.
She was charged with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon.
Her last boyfriend had ended up dead.
After speaking with Martel DeRuin's ex-girlfriend, Gwen Anderson, San Antonio detectives have a new suspect in his murder, his current girlfriend and music protege, Sasha Scar.
According to Gwen, Sasha and Martel had a pretty tumultuous relationship that he was trying to get out of.
Now police records have revealed this isn't Sasha's first brush with the law.
Detectives start delving into Miss Sasha's past, and they find some very disturbing information.
In 2019, Sasha was charged in connection to the homicide of her last boyfriend.
Sasha's then boyfriend had been shot and killed, and another man had been seriously injured.
21 years old, and she's been involved in the death of 2 of her boyfriends.
The incident report states that on November 29, 2019, Austin police officers responded to reports of a shooting near a local parking lot.
When they arrived, police discovered Sasha Scar alongside her 21-year-old boyfriend, Andrew Bass, who was suffering from a gunshot wound to the chest.
Paramedics attempted to perform CPR on Andrew, but it was too late.
He was ultimately pronounced dead at the scene.
Moments later, law enforcement received another call for help.
While police are with Sasha and Andrew, another 911 call comes in from a nearby liquor store. The caller says another man has come in with gunshot wounds to his leg and to his chest.
While the second victim was rushed to the hospital, police questioned Sasha.
Sasha told police that she had gone with Andrew to buy marijuana from a man she did not know.
I was just sitting in the car, and then I heard gunshots.
When she runs to see what is going on, she finds Andrew wrestling with another man. She said Andrew told her to grab the gun and the bag of marijuana
this other guy ran off and
During her interview, Sasha was adamant that the drug deal was set up by her boyfriend.
I didn't know any of this was gonna happen.
She said she was just tagging along.
But when police interviewed the other man who'd been shot, Phil Smith, they heard a very different story.
Don't believe anything she's saying.
He said, no, this is what happened. I'm friends with Sasha. Here's my phone. See, she set up a drug buy. She showed up with another male. They tried to rob me.
He said Sasha was in on the whole thing from the beginning.
Empty your pockets, Phil.
Realizing that he was being robbed, the man grabbed his own gun, and the two men exchanged shots.
They end up wrestling on the ground.
Sasha eventually grabbed Phil's gun and he ran to the liquor store for help.
When police investigate further, they discover the evidence lines up with Phil's version of events.
Sasha was lying about the altercation.
It was definitely a planned robbery and attack on this young man.
Ultimately, she was convicted of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, a first-degree felony.
Then, in January 2020, 1 year before Martel was killed, she was released on bond.
We knew there that she definitely had a propensity for violence. So we wanted to make sure that we tracked her down.
And when detectives look through Sasha's recent addresses, they make a surprising connection.
We found out that she used to live on O'Connor Road here in San Antonio.
O'Connor Road. That sounds familiar.
That call on Friday night to 911, the caller initially gave the street name as being on O'Connor Road and then stopped herself.
It's 16735 O'Connor Road, not O'Connor, La Cantera Parkway.
Did Sasha Scar make the 911 call from Martel's apartment, posing as Gwen Anderson?
Now I'm starting to put it together.
But tracking down their new prime suspect will be easier said than done.
We had to find Sasha Scar. The family was really digging in. They knew it was important to find her. And it was difficult. We didn't know where she was.
The police can't find her anywhere.
Sasha is not answering the phone. When police visit her previous address, they find out that she no longer lives there.
As patrol officers continue scouring the city for Sasha, detectives receive word that their forensic analyst has managed to unlock Martel's cell phone.
We did have Mr. DeRuin's cell phone, and we were able to pinpoint messages that were between him and Sasha on the night of January 22nd.
Looks like these came through at about the same time the neighbors heard that fight Friday night.
The texts give investigators a first-hand look at an argument that was spiraling out of control.
Martel was sending Sasha a long rant about how he caught her talking to another man and how disgraceful he found her behavior to be. You attacked me. I defended myself.
Martel wrote, "You attacked me, all because I asked you to leave."
Shortly thereafter, he said, you should be locked up in jail for the rest of your life. That's where you belong.
It sounded as if Martel was kicking Sasha out and ending their relationship.
The messages prove Sasha was in a heated dispute with Martel on the night he was killed, but it's still no smoking gun.
Police have no airtight evidence that Sasha fired the shot that took Martel's life.
The evidence is still circumstantial.
Until detectives get a call from a new witness.
San Antonio Homicide Unit.
Investigators receive a call from one of Martel's neighbors, the man who has a doorbell camera installed at his apartment.
This person did allow us to look at it.
On the video, they see Sasha Scar walking in front of Martel's apartment with a gun in her hand.
That just blew this whole case wide open.
After discovering heated texts between Martel DeRuin and his girlfriend Sasha Scar from the night he was killed, San Antonio police have zeroed in on the 21-year-old rapper as their prime suspect.
Mr. DeRuin was texting her, and it obviously led to this big fight.
It became crystal clear that a physical altercation did occur inside the home.
And thanks to newly obtained ring footage from one of Martel's neighbors, police now have their smoking gun.
The Ring video camera, the value of that evidence in this case cannot be understated.
We were able to see that on the footage, she was carrying a cell phone in her left hand and a handgun in her right hand.
Investigators are stunned by the video, not only about how concrete and undeniable this piece of evidence is, but also how nonchalant Sasha appears, walking with this gun in her hand and texting on her cell phone.
On the recording, investigators can even hear Sasha placing the 911 call San Antonio police received on the night Martel died.
We actually heard her make the 911 call where she even claims to be Ms. Anderson.
I'm trying to get in my apartment, but I'm not able to get in.
She was trying to frame Martel's ex, Gwen, for committing this crime.
As far as detectives are concerned, this is just undeniable proof that Sasha shot Martel.
Once we were confident that she is our suspect, we obtained an arrest warrant fairly quick.
But there's one problem. Investigators still have no idea where Sasha is.
The manhunt's on. We're looking for Sasha. We've got to find her.
When detectives try to trace Sasha's cell phone, they determined that the device had been switched off.
So we asked for help from the Marshal Service to track her down.
Meanwhile, detectives start reaching out to the people who know Sasha best.
We did have some people come forward, actual friends of Sasha, one claiming that she called him. He came and picked her up. We believe that was on the night of the 22nd.
She contacted me 2 days before. I was trying to come out here to Houston. He was very adamant about some knocking.
He gave us locations where he took her. It really wasn't helping too much at that time because she was still on the move.
Other friends say they've been trying to persuade Sasha to do the right thing.
Friends were coming forward saying they were trying to contact her and they were trying to convince her to turn herself in.
I keep calling her and it's going straight to voicemail. I can call her right now while you're on the phone and it's going to go straight to voicemail.
Finally, on February 6th, more than 2 weeks after Martel was killed, San Antonio police get the news they've been waiting for.
They receive word that Sasha has surrendered herself.
Instead of taking the chance of being apprehended when she was least expecting it, she decided to turn herself in.
When I found out that she had turned herself in, my thought was she'd be willing to talk. She'd be willing to explain to me what happened on that Friday night with Martel. I go to the jail to meet with her in hopes that she'll provide a statement. I advise her of her rights and tell her why I'm there.
Okay, tell me what happened, Sasha.
But Sasha doesn't say a word.
She refuses to answer any questions.
She won't give a statement. She decides she doesn't want to talk to me, and she asks for an attorney.
This is your chance to come clean.
Give me a lawyer.
Okay, that's what you want.
Yet even without a confession, investigators feel confident in the case they've built.
They charged Sasha with murder.
From there, it's my job now to put everything together and to present it to the district attorney's office. The family wanted justice for Martel. That's what we needed to focus on next.
When Sasha's trial begins in August 2023, everyone finally gets the chance to hear her side of the story.
Sasha took the witness stand during her murder trial. That doesn't happen very often, so I was kind of surprised that she did.
What she has to say leaves the whole courtroom speechless.
According to Sasha, Martel's death was not a murder.
She never intended to kill Martel.
She says it was a terrible accident.
In August of 2023, 23-year-old Sasha Scar is standing trial for the murder of her rapper boyfriend, Martel DeRuin.
Getting the evidence that we got was just, it was amazing. Rarely do we get video footage immediately after a crime where we've got the suspect carrying a murder weapon.
But once she takes the stand in her own defense, Sasha makes a brazen claim.
Sasha said she never intended to kill Martel.
According to Sasha, Martel's death wasn't murder. It was a terrible accident.
Sasha tells the court that the night of January 22nd started out like any other.
Sasha says that they were having a good time that night until she answered a FaceTime call from a man who wanted to discuss a music venture with her.
Hey, what's up?
Who is that?
He's just interested in my music.
According to Sasha, that call set Martel off.
She tried to just brush the conversation off and just go to bed, but Martel was too upset. He wasn't having it.
I can't believe you talked to another man while you in my apartment.
It's not even like that.
Sasha says the argument escalated to a physical fight on the bed.
She says he just jumped on her and attacked her and started beating her.
Get off of me!
She said he was hitting me, choking me to the point that I couldn't breathe.
In the midst of the struggle, the bed frame broke and Martel was thrown to the ground. Sasha says she seized that opportunity to grab his gun from the closet.
She grabbed the gun and ran from the bedroom into the kitchen.
When Martel pursued her, Sasha says she began throwing glasses and dishes just to put distance between the two.
But she says Martel was relentless.
She said she fled out of the apartment. She said she was barefooted. She was frantic. She was trying to call someone to come and get her.
After she was able to cool off for a few minutes, Sasha went back to the apartment to get her things, but found that the door was locked. She started yelling and banging on the door, telling Martel to let her in to get her things.
Martel, just give me my shoes and I'll be out of here.
Sasha says that's when the gun went off.
Martel!
She says she never intended to pull the trigger, but somehow, as she was banging the door, the shot was fired.
On the surface, Sasha's story seems plausible enough. But according to the prosecution, it's nothing but a pack of lies.
They contend that Martel's death was no accident.
They say that Sasha had every intention of killing Martel.
He tried to end things with her and lock her out of his apartment, but she wasn't having it.
Martel, open the door right now.
And once she heard Martel on the other side of the door, she raised the gun, shot through the door in a deliberate act of murder.
She wasn't there to get her things. She was there to kill him.
After just 2 short hours of deliberation, the jury reaches a decision.
They found Sasha guilty of murder.
In the state of Texas, we do not have different degrees of murder. It's just murder, and that's what Sasha was found guilty of.
Sasha Scar receives a sentence of 55 years behind bars.
It was just a big sigh of relief for me. Of course, there is that part of some sorrow for the family, but I was happy that they were able to get the justice that they deserved.
Even if justice has been served, Sasha Scar's violent actions can never be undone.
I really felt for Martel. This man was truly just an innocent victim to this situation.
Sasha had a lot of choices that night. She could have easily called the police and said, "Hey, there's been an altercation. Can you please come over here and stand by while I get my stuff?"
All right, let's do it one more time.
Instead, she chose to take the life of a man who was on the verge of accomplishing great things.
Knowing what Sasha had done in the past, knowing what she was about, how, what she was into, I really felt for Martell because he probably didn't know that. He knew with his relationship with her how it was going, but he continued to try to help her, which shows what kind of character he had, what kind of heart he had. It was just tragic because he had this attraction with this woman that turned out to be the worst possible scenario in his life.
His life was just cut short, and we don't have the opportunity to see what he could have brought to the earth. It's a loss to everyone that knew him.
Had recently made explicit, unwanted sexual advances toward him, suggesting that Stephen could live rent-free in exchange for sexual favors. Stephen had rejected these advances, but noted that the pastor's behavior had become increasingly erratic and intrusive, particularly regarding Stephen's relationships with women. Subsequent analysis of Pastor Reeves' mobile telephone records revealed that the anonymous, threatening calls to Stephen and Velma had been placed from Reeves' phone, using a blocking feature to conceal his identity. It became clear to investigators that the pastor was deeply, pathologically obsessed with his young roommate. The final piece of the puzzle arrived from the forensic laboratory. DNA recovered from the interior of Latrice's abandoned vehicle, as well as biological material found at the primary crime scene, matched Robert Reeves. The scratches on his arms were consistent with defensive wounds inflicted by Latrice as she fought her attacker. The psychological reconstruction of the crime paints a chilling picture of displacement and obsession. Pastor Reeves, consumed by a secret desire for Stephen Randolph, viewed Latrice not merely as acquaintance, but as a direct rival for Stephen's attention. In his distorted mind, he believed that by removing Latrice, he could eliminate a barrier and bring Stephen closer to him. On the night of January 30th, Reeves followed Latrice as she departed from his residence. He traveled along Interstate 540, eventually signaling her to pull over. Given his position as a respected pastor and an older authority figure, Latrice likely felt secure in stopping to speak with him. It was there, on the dark shoulder of the highway, that Reeves launched his savage attack. After committing the murder, he attempted to hide her vehicle further down the road, but was forced to abandon his own car when it became disabled, a critical error that ultimately led to his downfall. In September of 2009, Robert Reeves stood trial for first-degree murder. The defense attempted to argue that the DNA evidence was the result of casual transfer, suggesting Latrice had picked up Reeves' DNA from surfaces in the home she visited. They also tried to shift suspicion back to Stephen Randolph, pointing out that Stephen's DNA was found under Latrice's fingernails. The prosecution successfully countered these arguments. The presence of Stephen's DNA was entirely consistent with their intimate contact earlier that evening. More importantly, the sheer volume of Reeves' DNA in Latrice's car, combined with his lack of a verified alibi, his documented threats, the scratches on his arms, and the sighting of his vehicle at the scene, left no room for reasonable doubt. Robert Reeves was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life. Imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The verdict brought an end to a case that had deeply shaken the community and shattered the lives of several young people. Conclusion and psychological synthesis. These three cases, though distinct in their geographic locations and specific circumstances, share a profound common thread: the destructive power of uncontrolled possessiveness and obsession. Whether it is the tragic insecurity of Denise Miller, the violent control of Timothy Shepard, or the pathologically displaced jealousy of Robert Reeves, each narrative demonstrates how a failure to respect the boundaries of another human life can lead to catastrophe. As a community, we must learn to recognize the early indicators of these behaviors: pathological jealousy, constant monitoring, threats of self-harm, and attempts to isolate a partner from their support systems are not expressions of deep love. They are warning signs of a dangerous psychological instability. Through the dedication of law enforcement officers, the precision of forensic science, and the strength of the families who survive these tragedies, the truth is brought to light and justice is served. It is our hope that by analyzing these narratives with care and respect, we can contribute to a safer, more aware society where the triumph of good over evil is not just a hope, but a reality. The study of criminal psychology frequently reveals a striking contrast between the facade an individual presents to the world and the reality of their private behavior. To the casual observer, the relationships that form the fabric of society appear to be built on mutual affection, shared goals, and basic human decency. Yet, beneath the surface of seemingly ordinary lives, undercurrents of control, possessiveness, and pathology can quietly develop occasionally, culminating in acts of tragic violence. When investigative forces are called upon to resolve these crises, they must rely not only on the physical tools of forensic science, but also on a deep understanding of human motivation. A detective must reconstruct the thoughts of the perpetrator, identifying the moments where healthy emotion turned into dangerous obsession. By examining these cases through a deliberate psychological lens, society can better understand the warning signs of interpersonal dysfunction and appreciate the persistent efforts of those who work to uphold justice. Chapter 1: The Shadow of Possessiveness. The transition from late adolescence into young adulthood is typically a period marked by growth, academic achievement, and expanding personal independence. For Tanisha Stewart, a 19-year-old college freshman, this phase of life was defined by promise. Raised in one of the more challenging neighborhoods of Houston, Texas, she had overcome the early loss of her father to excel academically, eventually earning a scholarship to Texas Agricultural and Mechanical University. Those who knew her described an intelligent, motivated young woman with an infectious smile and a determined focus on her education. In the spring of 2005, while working at a local pizza restaurant, Tanisha, then 17 years of age, met Timothy Shepard, a coworker who was
25.
Despite an 8-year age difference, a relationship developed between them. To Tanisha's family, Timothy appeared eager to integrate himself into their household, assisting with household tasks and presenting himself as a helpful and supportive presence. However, the dynamics of their relationship began to shift as Tanisha moved away to begin her collegiate studies. The physical separation of 2 hours between Houston and the university campus exposed underlying vulnerabilities in Timothy's psychological profile. For an individual whose self-worth is closely tied to the control they exert over their partner, a partner's academic and social advancement can be perceived as an existential threat. As Tanisha began to build a life independent of her hometown, Timothy's behavior grew increasingly controlling. He began calling her frequently, sometimes traveling to the university campus unannounced to monitor her activities when she did not immediately reply to his messages. This behavior is characteristic of what psychologists identify as coercive control, where an individual employs surveillance, isolation, and intimidation to maintain dominance within a relationship. When Tanisha returned home for spring break in March of 2007, she sought to balance her time between her family, her friends, and Timothy. She had also recently begun dating a 19-year-old peer, Mark Marks, representing a deliberate step toward a life free from Timothy's control. On the morning of Thursday, March 15, 2007, Tanisha disappeared. When she failed to attend a planned concert with her friends, her family grew concerned, eventually filing a missing persons report on Monday, March 19th. Investigators from the Harris County Sheriff's Office immediately sought to reconstruct her final known movements, centering their inquiries on the last 2 individuals to have seen her, Mark Marks and Timothy
Shepard.
During initial questioning, Timothy maintained that he had picked Tanisha up early on Thursday morning. He claimed that after they arrived at his apartment, she received a telephone call from Mark, which led to a confrontation. According to Timothy, Tanisha refused to discuss the matter and walked out of the apartment later that morning, leaving on foot a voluntary search of Timothy's apartment at that time yielded no immediate physical evidence of a struggle, and investigators, lacking sufficient cause to detain him, were forced to look elsewhere. Mark Marks was also interviewed. He cooperated fully with law enforcement, explaining that while he was aware of Tanisha's ongoing struggles to distance herself from Timothy, he had nothing to do with her disappearance. His alibi was verified by multiple witnesses who confirmed he was traveling with friends at the time. With Mark excluded, investigators were faced with the possibility that Tanisha had been abducted by a stranger after leaving Timothy's apartment on foot, a scenario that prompted search parties to scour the wooded areas surrounding the residential complex. As the search continued without success, neighbors of Timothy Shepard came forward with unusual observations. They reported that on the Friday and Saturday following Tanisha's disappearance, Timothy had been engaged in extensive, continuous outdoor cooking using multiple grills. The volume of smoke was substantial enough that neighbors had contacted emergency services, fearing a
fire.
First responders who arrived at the scene reported that Timothy claimed to be preparing food for a large church gathering, and a firefighter noted seeing what appeared to be meat soaking in a bathtub. Additionally, another resident reported seeing Timothy pouring large quantities of household bleach onto his patio, creating an odor strong enough to cause physical discomfort. These details shifted the focus of the investigation back to Timothy. Recognizing the limits of standard law enforcement interviews with a suspect who had already established a narrative, Tanisha's family sought the assistance of Quannell X, a well-known local community advocate. Quannell, who had also been contacted by Timothy's family under the impression that the young man was being unfairly targeted, arranged a private meeting with Timothy at his apartment. In the quiet environment of the apartment, Quannell observed Timothy's extreme physical and emotional distress, recognizing that Timothy was struggling under the weight of his actions. Quannell appealed to his conscience, asking him directly if he had harmed Tanisha. Faced with this direct inquiry from a trusted community representative, Timothy confessed that during their argument on Thursday morning, he had entered a rage and strangled Tanisha to death. He initially claimed to have placed her body in a commercial waste container behind his apartment complex. Quannell immediately communicated this confession to investigator Sidney Miller. Law enforcement escorted Timothy back to the waste container, but found it empty. The container had been serviced recently, and the contents transferred to a massive regional landfill. Given the scale of the facility, a physical search was deemed logistically and financially impractical. Following his arrest, Timothy exercised his right to legal counsel and declined further interviews. To secure a conviction without a body, investigators deployed crime scene investigation teams to conduct a highly detailed forensic examination of Timothy's apartment. Utilizing specialized techniques, forensic specialists discovered tiny bone fragments near the outdoor grill and enamel fragments inside the kitchen garbage disposal unit. Subsequent analysis confirmed that the enamel was human and matched Tanisha's dental records. On September 29, 2008, the state of Texas versus Timothy Shepard commenced. The prosecution presented a case based on circumstantial and forensic evidence, arguing that Timothy's possessiveness had culminated in a fatal assault when he realized Tanisha was asserting her independence. The defense argued that without a complete body, the prosecution's theory remained unproven. However, the testimony of Quannell X regarding the confession, combined with the forensic discovery of the dental enamel in the disposal, proved compelling. Timothy's cousin also testified, recounting prior conversations in which Timothy had described hypothetical methods of destroying evidence. During the sentencing phase, Timothy chose to testify, claiming he had acted in self-defense after Tanisha attacked him with a knife during their argument. He presented photographs of minor cuts on his hands from the night of his arrest. Under cross-examination, however, when asked to explain the disposal of her remains, Timothy confirmed that he had utilized a large smoker to destroy her body. The jury rejected the claim of self-defense, finding Timothy Shepard guilty of murder and assessing a punishment of 99 years in prison. The resolution of this case highlighted the tragic consequences of unchecked possessiveness and the persistence of the investigators and community members who worked to uncover the truth. Chapter 2: The Twisted Web of Jealousy. The peaceful image of suburban Raleigh, North Carolina, was disrupted on the morning of Wednesday, January 30th, 2008, when motorists on Interstate 540 reported seeing a body on the shoulder of the highway. First responders discovered the body of a young woman lying in the grass. She had suffered multiple sharp force injuries to her face, neck, and torso. The victim was identified as 21-year-old Latrice Curtis. She had been married for 9 months to Darren Curtis, a university student and former National Guard soldier. Darren, who commuted along that same highway, had noticed his wife's abandoned white sedan parked a short distance from where her body was discovered. Panic-stricken, he returned to the scene, where detectives confirmed her identity. An autopsy revealed that Latrice had been stabbed approximately 40 times. Her carotid artery and jugular vein had been severed, and she had sustained defensive wounds to her hands, indicating a significant struggle. Additionally, medical examiners recovered a condom from within the victim's body, suggesting recent consensual sexual activity, as there were no physical signs of sexual assault. Given Darren's presence at the scene, investigators initially focused on him. He cooperated fully, explaining that Latrice had called him the previous evening to say she was running late from her classes at North Carolina Central University and planned to get some food. Darren had fallen asleep and, upon waking the next morning to find she had not returned, assumed she had stayed at her family's home. A search of Darren's hands, arms, and vehicle revealed no injuries or physical evidence linking him to the assault. Subpoenaed telephone records revealed a high volume of communication between Latrice and a telephone number belonging to Stephen Randolph, a well-known student-athlete on the university campus. 2 days after the murder, Stephen arrived at the sheriff's office, accompanied by his roommate, Robert Reeves, a 43-year-old local pastor, often referred to as the bishop. During his interview, Stephen initially described Latrice as a classmate and friend. However, when presented with the telephone and autopsy findings, he admitted they had been engaged in a brief, highly secretive extramarital affair. He stated that Latrice had visited his residence on the evening of January 29th, where they had been intimate. According to Stephen, the condom had become lodged, and Latrice left his apartment around 10 o'clock in the evening, intending to remove it at home. Stephen claimed he then drove to the apartment of his girlfriend, Velma Newton, where he remained until the early hours of the
Morning.
Stephen also revealed that Latrice had called him multiple times around midnight, expressing anxiety about a potential pregnancy resulting from the mishap. While Stephen's athletic ambitions made the prospect of an unplanned pregnancy a potential source of stress, his girlfriend Velma verified his presence at her apartment during the critical hours of the night. Velma also informed detectives that she and Stephen had been receiving anonymous, threatening telephone calls demanding that Stephen end his relationship with her. Furthermore, Stephen's vehicle tires had recently been slashed outside her residence. The investigation took a significant turn when State Trooper Isaac Cooper contacted detectives regarding a routine traffic observation he made on Interstate 540 at approximately 1:30 on the morning of January 30th. Cooper had noted two vehicles parked on the shoulder with their hazard lights activated. One was a white sedan matching Latrice's vehicle. The other, parked on the eastbound shoulder, was registered to Pastor Robert Reeves. Faced with this information, detectives re-interviewed Pastor Reeves. Reeves insisted he had been at church services that evening and had returned home to sleep, suggesting Stephen must have borrowed his vehicle without his knowledge. However, Reeves' sister, who attended the same church, stated she had not seen her brother at the service. During the interview, detectives noticed deep scratches on Reeves' hands and arms. Reeves attributed these injuries to an accident while moving a desk with Stephen. When detectives asked Stephen about this incident, he stated no such accident had occurred. Reeves' telephone records were subpoenaed, revealing that the anonymous blocked calls to Stephen and Velma had originated from Reeves' telephone. Additional background checks revealed that Reeves had a history of inappropriate sexual behavior and had previously sought to establish control over Stephen. Stephen recounted an incident where Reeves had made sexual advances toward him, offering to waive his rent in exchange for sexual favors, which Stephen had rejected. Psychological analysis suggests that Reeves developed an intense, obsessive infatuation with Stephen. Unable to control or possess Stephen directly, Reeves projected his frustration onto the women in Stephen's life. He began monitoring Stephen's visitors, growing increasingly resentful of Latrice. On the night of January 29th, after observing Latrice visit Stephen, Reeves followed her as she drove home. The prosecution hypothesized that Reeves used his standing as a pastor and a family friend to convince Latrice to pull over on the shoulder of Interstate 540. Once she stopped, a physical confrontation ensued. Latrice fought back, scratching her assailant, which explained the injuries on Reeves' arms and the presence of his deoxyribonucleic acid, DNA, inside her vehicle. On September 29, 2009, Robert Reeves stood trial for first-degree murder. The defense argued that the DNA found under Latrice's fingernails belonged to Stephen Randolph, suggesting Stephen was the true perpetrator. The prosecution countered that this DNA was the result of their intimate contact earlier that evening, whereas the presence of Reeves' DNA in her car, the physical injuries on his arms, the trooper's sighting of his vehicle, and the evidence of his stalking behavior pointed directly to the
pastor.
The jury found Robert Reeves guilty of first-degree murder.
He was sentenced to
life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, bringing a tragic end to a case defined by obsession and double lives. Chapter 3: The Price of Obsessive Control. In December of 2004, the community of Little Elm, Texas, was forced to confront a tragedy involving one of its own law enforcement officers. On the morning of December 10th, 37-year-old Wayne Irby, a 6-year veteran of the Little Elm Police Department, failed to report for his scheduled 6 o'clock morning shift. Known for his punctuality and dedication, his absence immediately raised concerns among his colleagues. Wayne had been in a long-term, occasionally volatile relationship with 44-year-old Denise Miller. Denise, a divorced mother of 2, had moved to the area seeking a fresh start and had met Wayne during a routine neighborhood patrol. While the relationship was initially close, it was soon strained by Denise's intense jealousy. She frequently accused Wayne of infidelity, leading to a temporary separation during which Wayne moved into a separate rental home. Although they had recently reconciled after Denise lost her job, the underlying trust issues remained unresolved. When Wayne failed to appear for work, officers conducted a welfare check at the residence they shared, but found no one home. Denise's children reported they had not seen their mother or Wayne since the previous evening. They mentioned receiving a telephone call from Denise around midnight, in which she expressed her love in a manner they found unusually emotional. Concerned for Wayne's safety, his partner, Jerry Walker, and Officer James Wynn visited Wayne's former rental property. Inside, they discovered Wayne's telephone and personal items on the kitchen counter. In a back hallway, they found Wayne Irby deceased on the floor, having suffered a single gunshot wound to the back of his head. There were no signs of a struggle. A search of the residence Wayne and Denise shared revealed that Wayne's uniform and duty belt were present, but his .40 caliber service weapon was missing. Investigators also recovered a handwritten note from Denise in the master bedroom, expressing deep emotional pain and suggesting she intended to end her life. On the kitchen island, a second note was found, reading, "I am sorry I took both of our lives. Please contact our moms." An all-points bulletin was issued for Denise and her vehicle. Early the following morning, on December 11th, the manager of a hotel in Gainesville, Texas, reported a guest requiring emergency medical assistance. Officers arrived to find Denise lying on the floor of her room, suffering from a self-inflicted gunshot wound to her head. A .25 caliber handgun was found beside her, along with Wayne's service weapon. The service weapon had jammed because a cartridge had been loaded backward into the chamber. Denise was rushed to a trauma center where she survived her injuries but was left with permanent physical disabilities, including partial paralysis and blindness in one eye. Investigators recovered a third note in her hotel room, which was much longer and contained a line claiming that Wayne's shooting had been an accident, after which she had panicked and fled. When Texas Ranger Tracy Murphy attempted to interview Denise in the hospital, she appeared to have no memory of the events. She was able to recall details of her life prior to the incident, but maintained she had no recollection of shooting Wayne or herself. Medical professionals noted that such amnesia can occur as a result of physical trauma to the brain combined with the psychological defense mechanism of blocking a highly traumatic event. Forensic analysis of the .25 caliber bullet recovered from Wayne's body confirmed it had been fired from the handgun found beside Denise in the hotel room. Investigators also learned that the handgun belonged to Denise's stepfather and that she had taken it prior to visiting Wayne. Furthermore, testing of the weapon's trigger revealed it required approximately 5 pounds of pressure to fire, reducing the likelihood of an accidental discharge. The prosecution argued that Denise, unable to accept Wayne's decision to end the relationship, had traveled to his rental home with a firearm. Finding him unprepared for an altercation, she shot him from behind. She then wrote the confession notes and traveled to the hotel to attempt suicide. On July 10, 2006, Denise Miller stood trial for murder. The defense maintained that the shooting was a tragic accident, pointing to her final note as a dying declaration of intent. They argued that the lack of a fully loaded magazine suggested she had not planned a homicide. The prosecution emphasized the preparation involved in acquiring the firearm, the location of the wound, and her failure to summon medical help for Wayne. The jury found Denise Miller guilty of murder. Considering her severe physical limitations resulting from her suicide attempt, the jury declined to recommend the death penalty, instead sentencing her to 62 years in prison. Conclusion: the lessons of justice. These 3 cases, though distinct in their details, share a common psychological thread. In each instance, an individual's inability to manage feelings of jealousy, possessiveness, or obsession led to the destruction of a promising life. The perpetrators attempted to exert absolute control over another human being, ultimately resorting to violence when that control was threatened. The resolution of these cases was made possible by the methodical work of forensic scientists, investigators, and community members who refused to let these crimes go unsolved. By analyzing the physical evidence and the psychological patterns of the offenders, the justice system was able to hold them accountable. These histories serve as a reminder of the importance of recognizing the warning signs of coercive control and the enduring value of a society committed to the rule of law. Introduction to Criminal Behavior and Investigative Psychology. The study of criminal psychology often reveals that the most devastating acts of violence do not originate from external, chaotic forces, but rather from the fragile landscapes of human relationships. When possessiveness, jealousy, and a desire for absolute control masquerade as love, the consequences can be tragic. Investigators are tasked not only with processing physical evidence, but also with navigating the complex psychological mazes constructed by those who believe they can escape justice. Through meticulous forensic science, patient interrogation techniques, and unwavering dedication, law enforcement professionals work to reconstruct the
truth.
The following analytical narratives examine 3 distinct cases where the illusion of domestic stability shattered, leaving investigators to piece together the fragments of lives lost while seeking justice for the victims and their families. Each case highlights the contrast between the outward personas of the offenders and the grim realities of their actions, offering profound lessons in the human condition, the nature of obsession, and the triumph of systematic investigation. Case Study 1: The Illusion of Possession, the Investigation of Tanisha Stewart and Timothy Shepard. The city of Houston, Texas, with its vast highways and sprawling suburban developments, became the setting for a deeply troubling mystery in the spring of 2007. It was a case that began with a sudden disappearance and evolved into an intricate forensic investigation, testing the resolve of local detectives and bringing a community together in a solemn quest for answers. At the heart of this narrative was Tanisha Stewart, a 19-year-old college freshman whose academic journey had recently taken her to Texas Agricultural and Mechanical University. Blessed with a bright mind, a dedicated work ethic, and an infectious smile, Tanisha was a young woman of great promise. She had grown up in one of the more challenging neighborhoods of Houston, experiencing hardship early in life when she lost her father. Rather than letting her environment define her, she immersed herself in her academic pursuits, earning a scholarship that opened the doors to higher education. Her family viewed her as a beacon of hope, a young woman destined to achieve meaningful accomplishments. In the spring of 2005, while working at a local pizza restaurant, Tanisha met Timothy Shepard, who was 25 years old at the time.
Timothy
was older, possessing an air of confidence that initially drew Tanisha in. Despite an age gap of 8 years, a relationship developed. To Tanisha, Timothy represented both a partner and a supportive figure. In an effort to demonstrate his devotion, Timothy spent considerable time with her family, offering to assist with household chores, repairing electronic devices, and gradually earning the trust of her mother, sisters, and brothers. They welcomed him into their household, viewing him as a positive presence. However, the dynamics of the relationship began to shift when Tanisha transitioned to university life. The physical distance of nearly 2 hours between the campus and Houston introduced new challenges, while Tanisha began to expand her horizons, meeting new friends, and embracing the independence of college life. Timothy struggled with the transition. His behavior grew increasingly possessive. He began to monitor her activities, calling frequently, and demanding her attention. At one point, during her first semester, the couple separated briefly, during which time Timothy attempted to rekindle a relationship with a former girlfriend. Upon realizing his mistake, he traveled to the university campus to surprise Tanisha, convincing her to reconcile. Yet, the reconciliation could not mask the widening gulf between their life.
Paths.
Tanisha was moving forward, developing a sense of self-reliance, while Timothy remained anchored in a desire for control. When Tanisha returned home for spring break in March of 2007, she sought to balance her time between Timothy and her friends. This boundary did not sit well with Timothy, who increasingly resented any portion of her life that did not revolve around him. The anxiety of her family reached a critical point on Sunday, March 18, 2007. Tanisha had planned to attend a concert with her friends, but she failed to appear. She did not answer her telephone, and her normal practice of checking in with her mother and sister, Gayla, ceased entirely. 36 hours passed without any word, prompting her family to contact the local authorities. A missing persons report was officially filed on Monday, March 19th. The investigation was assigned to investigator Sidney Miller and his partner. Recognizing that the first 48 hours are critical in missing persons cases, the detectives began by identifying the individuals who had last seen Tanisha. Timothy Shepard quickly became a primary subject of interest. When invited to the police station for questioning, Timothy appeared cooperative. He provided a detailed account of the last time he had seen Tanisha, which he claimed was on the morning of Thursday, March 15th. According to Timothy, he had picked her up around 3 in the morning.
Upon
returning to his apartment, Tanisha received a telephone call from a male friend from college, a young man named Mark Marks. Timothy admitted that this call upset him, leading to a confrontation regarding her fidelity. He claimed that Tanisha refused to discuss the matter, and after a brief, tense exchange later, that morning, she walked out of his apartment, leaving on foot. He maintained that he had no knowledge of her whereabouts beyond that moment, professing his continued affection for her. The detectives, seeking to verify his account, requested consent to search his apartment. Timothy provided written, voluntary consent. A preliminary search of the residence did not reveal any obvious signs of a struggle or physical violence. Without sufficient evidence to detain him, the investigators returned his keys and turned their attention to other possibilities. The existence of Mark Marks as a romantic interest introduced a potential alternative scenario. Investigators contacted one of Tanisha's close friends, Ashley Walton, who confirmed that Tanisha had indeed been dating Mark for approximately a month. Ashley revealed that while Tanisha harbored deep affection for Timothy, she was also drawn to Mark, who was aware of her ongoing relationship with Timothy, but wished for an exclusive commitment. Detectives located Mark Marks on Wednesday, March 21st, and brought him in for questioning. Mark, a 19-year-old student, cooperated fully. He admitted to dating Tanisha and confirmed that they had spoken on the morning of March 15th. However, he provided a verified alibi, demonstrating that he was traveling with friends on South Padre Island at the time of Tanisha's disappearance. With Mark eliminated as a suspect, investigators had to consider the distressing possibility of an abduction by a stranger, leading to search operations in the wooded areas surrounding Timothy's apartment complex. During these searches, community members and neighbors began to share observations that would redirect the focus of the investigation.
Several
Residents of the apartment complex reported that in the days following Tanisha's disappearance, Timothy had engaged in an unusually intense period of outdoor
cooking.
He had 2 grills operating simultaneously, producing significant amounts of smoke that eventually prompted neighbors to contact the local fire
department.
When first responders had arrived to address the smoke, Timothy claimed he was preparing food for a large church gathering of approximately 150 to 200 people. The explanation satisfied the fire department at the time, and one firefighter noted seeing what appeared to be raw meat soaking in a bathtub inside the apartment. Furthermore, a neighbor reported seeing Timothy pouring an extraordinary amount of bleach onto his outdoor patio, describing the scent as so powerful that it caused physical discomfort to those nearby. This behavior, combined with his lack of participation in the community-led search efforts for Tanisha, heightened the suspicions of both the family and the detectives. Recognizing the need for assistance, Tanisha's family reached out to Quannell X, a well-known community activist in Houston who had a reputation for facilitating peaceful surrenders and navigating delicate community crises. Interestingly, Timothy's family had also contacted Quannell, seeking protection from what they perceived as overly aggressive police scrutiny. Quannell, seeking to uncover the truth, arranged a private meeting with Timothy at his apartment. Sensing Timothy's extreme stress, Quannell suggested they speak in the bathroom, a space Timothy felt was safe from potential surveillance. It was during this intense, private conversation that the psychological weight of Timothy's actions became too heavy to bear. When pressed to look Quannell in the eye and state whether he had harmed Tanisha, Timothy's composure dissolved. He confessed that during the confrontation regarding the early morning telephone call, his anger had escalated into physical violence. He admitted to strangling Tanisha to death. He further stated that he had placed her body in a dumpster located at the rear of the apartment complex. Quannell immediately contacted investigator Sidney Miller. On Wednesday, March 21st, at approximately 5:30 in the afternoon, investigator Miller, his partner, Quannell, and Timothy drove to the apartment complex. Timothy pointed out the specific dumpster where he claimed to have disposed of the remains. However, when the detectives looked inside, the dumpster was empty. It had recently been emptied as part of the regular municipal waste collection. The realization that the remains had been transported to a massive regional landfill presented an immense obstacle. Investigators learned that a systematic search of the landfill would require extraordinary financial resources, potentially exceeding $500,000, with very little guarantee of recovery due to the sheer volume of waste. In a display of profound dignity, Tanisha's family requested that the county not expend those resources, choosing instead to focus on securing a conviction through other investigative means. Following his arrest, Timothy invoked his right to legal counsel and declined further interviews. To secure a conviction without a body, the prosecution required indisputable physical evidence. The crime scene investigation team was dispatched to conduct an exhaustive forensic sweep of Timothy's apartment. The second, more intensive search yielded critical discoveries. In the kitchen, forensic specialists recovered small bone fragments and material from the garbage disposal, which was later identified by the crime laboratory as human tooth enamel. Outside, near the area where the grills had been positioned, investigators found charred bone fragments. While the external bone fragments were too badly damaged by heat to provide viable DNA, the tooth enamel was positively identified as belonging to Tanisha. The combination of the tooth enamel, the neighbor accounts of the intense barbecuing, the firefighters' observation of the bathtub, and the heavy use of bleach allowed investigators to reconstruct a horrific sequence of events. The prosecution asserted that Timothy had dismembered the victim and used his grills to incinerate her remains, subsequently disposing of the ash and smaller fragments in the dumpster and the kitchen drainage system. On September 29, 2008, the trial of the state of Texas versus Timothy Shepard began. The prosecution faced the challenge of presenting a murder case based largely on circumstantial evidence and forensic fragments. They established Timothy's motive as a fatal manifestation of jealousy and control, arguing that he chose to end Tanisha's life rather than allow her to pursue her independence. The defense argued that the state's case relied heavily on a horrifying narrative without a body to prove the cause of death. However, the prosecution's case was strengthened by the testimony of Quannell X, who recounted Timothy's initial confession, and Timothy's cousin, Nicholas Shepard. Nicholas delivered testimony stating that Timothy had previously made statements suggesting that if Tanisha ever attempted to leave him, he would resort to extreme violence, specifically mentioning dismemberment as a means of concealing a crime. In a surprising turn during the sentencing phase, Timothy Shepard took the stand. In his own defense, he attempted to argue that the death had been an accident, claiming that Tanisha had reacted violently to his attempts to block her from leaving the apartment, brandishing a knife. He claimed he had placed his hands around her neck in self-defense and blacked out, realizing only afterward that she had stopped breathing. When questioned by the prosecution regarding the post-mortem treatment of her body, Timothy corrected the prosecutor's terminology, clarifying that he had not used a standard barbecue pit, but had instead utilized a smoker. This clinical, detached admission during his testimony deeply affected the courtroom, underscoring a complete lack of empathy. The jury rejected the claim of self-defense, upholding the guilty verdict for murder. Timothy Shepard was sentenced to 99 years in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, the maximum penalty available. While the trial brought a legal end to the tragedy, the loss of Tanisha Stewart remained a painful reminder of the destructive nature of domestic obsession. Her family and friends chose to honor her memory by focusing on her academic achievements, her vibrant spirit, and the potential of the life she lived, rather than the darkness of her departure. Case Study to Obsession in the Sanctuary, the investigation of Latrice Curtis and Robert Reeves. The winter morning of January 30th, 2008, in Raleigh, North Carolina, began with a chilling discovery that would expose a complex network of deception, secret relationships, and fatal obsession. The case would ultimately challenge a community's faith in its leadership and demonstrate the power of meticulous DNA analysis in solving the most personal of crimes. At 7:30 in the morning commuters traveling along Interstate 540 noticed a figure lying in the grass beside the highway. First, responders arrived quickly, discovering the body of a young woman.
It was
immediately clear that she had not been the victim of a pedestrian accident.
She
had suffered multiple sharp force injuries to her face, neck, and torso.
The
brutality of the attack was evident, yet there were no witnesses, no obvious weapon, and no immediate identification on the victim. Among the drivers caught in the resulting traffic delay was Darren Curtis. As he slowly passed the active crime scene, he noted a blue tarp covering the victim. Approximately half a mile further down the highway, he spotted a white passenger car parked on the shoulder. Recognizing the vehicle as belonging to his wife, Latrice, Darren returned to the scene in a state of panic. Investigators soon confirmed his fears. The young woman in the grass was 21-year-old
Latrice Curtis.
Latrice was a student at North Carolina Central University in Durham, pursuing a degree in business administration. She was known for her outgoing personality, her academic focus, and her devotion to her family. She had been married to Darren, a former National Guard soldier, for just 9 months. To their friends and family, the young couple appeared to be building a stable, promising future together. The autopsy revealed the extreme violence of the crime.
Latrice had been stabbed
approximately 40 times. The attack had severed her carotid artery and jugular vein, and her vocal cords had been cut, preventing her from crying out. However, evidence of a fierce struggle remained under her fingernails, indicating she had fought her attacker. Crucially, forensic examiners recovered a condom from her body, with no physical injuries indicating a sexual assault. This suggested a consensual intimate encounter had occurred shortly before her death. Investigators began their inquiry by questioning Darren Curtis. He explained that his last contact with Latrice was a telephone call at 10 in the evening the previous night, during which she stated she was running late from her university classes and planned to get food. Darren fell asleep around 11:30 in the evening, assuming she had decided to stay at her family's home due to the late hour. When he awoke the next morning, his calls to her went directly to voicemail. He departed for work at 7:30 in the morning, subsequently discovering her car on his commute. A search of the couple's apartment and Darren's vehicle revealed no evidence of a struggle or any suspicious materials. Darren had no physical injuries, consistent with a physical altercation, and he cooperated fully with the police, consenting to all searches. He was ruled out as a suspect, leaving investigators to search for the identity of the person who had been with Latrice in her final hours. A breakthrough came through the analysis of Latrice's mobile telephone records. Investigators identified a high volume of calls exchanged around midnight on the night of her disappearance with a number registered to Stephen Randolph. Stephen Randolph was a prominent student-athlete at North Carolina Central University, a talented basketball player with aspirations of entering the National Basketball Association. 2 days after the discovery of Latrice's body, Stephen arrived at the sheriff's office to provide a statement. He did not come alone. He was accompanied by his roommate, a 43-year-old local pastor named Robert Reeves, who was well known in the community as a charismatic minister and motivational speaker. During his initial interview, Stephen claimed he and Latrice were merely classmates who occasionally studied together. However, when presented with the telephone records and the forensic findings from the autopsy, Stephen admitted to a secret, passionate affair. He explained that Latrice had visited his residence on the night of January 29th, where they had engaged in a sexual encounter. During this encounter, a condom had become trapped inside her. Despite their efforts, they could not retrieve it, and Latrice departed around 10 in the evening, stating she would address the issue at home. Stephen claimed that after she left, he drove to the apartment of his girlfriend, Velma Newton, arriving around 10 in the evening and departing around 1 in the morning. He stated that during this time, Latrice called him repeatedly, expressing intense anxiety about the possibility of an unwanted
pregnancy.
Stephen denied any involvement in her murder, expressing deep shock at her death. The investigators then interviewed Pastor Robert Reeves. Reeves, known to many as the bishop, explained that he had allowed Stephen to rent a basement room in his home for a modest sum of $300 a month. Reeves confirmed that he saw Latrice's car parked outside his house on the evening of January 29th before he departed for an 8:15 evening church service. He claimed that when he returned at 11:30 in the evening, both Stephen and Latrice were gone, and he retired for the night. However, the investigation took a dramatic turn when detectives interviewed the pastor's sister, Willa Mae Thorpe, who had attended the same church service.
She
revealed that her brother was not present at the church that evening. Further doubt was cast on the pastor's account when investigators analyzed his mobile telephone records. The records revealed that Reeves had made numerous calls to Stephen and Velma Newton using a block number. Stephen later disclosed that he and Velma had been receiving anonymous, threatening telephone calls for weeks, warning Stephen to end his romantic activities. Furthermore, Stephen's car tires had been slashed outside Velma's apartment on a prior occasion. Stephen also revealed a highly unusual interaction with the pastor. He claimed that after one of Latrice's visits, Reeves had entered his room and made inappropriate sexual advances, offering to waive his monthly rent in exchange for sexual favors. Stephen had rejected the advances, but the interaction exposed a deep, unrequited obsession that the pastor harbored for his young roommate. The critical piece of physical evidence emerged from State Trooper Isaac Cooper. Cooper reported that at approximately 1:30 in the morning on January 30th, he had observed a disabled vehicle with its hazard lights flashing on the eastbound shoulder of Interstate 540, very close to where Latrice's body was later found. He ran the license plate, which returned a registration to Robert Reeves. On the opposite side of the highway, Cooper had noticed a white passenger car with its hazard lights flashing, matching the description of Latrice's vehicle. When investigators examined Robert Reeves, they observed fresh, deep scratches on his hands and arms. Reeves claimed he had sustained the injuries when he fell backward while moving a desk with Stephen. However, when questioned separately, Stephen stated that no such move or accident had occurred. Forensic analysis of the DNA collected from the steering wheel of Latrice's abandoned car provided the final link. The sample contained a mixture of genetic material. While some of the DNA belonged to Latrice and Stephen, a distinct profile matched the DNA profile of Robert Reeves. The prosecution's theory was that Robert Reeves, driven by a possessive obsession with Stephen, viewed Latrice as a threat. His jealousy escalated when he learned of their sexual relationship and the potential pregnancy which he feared would bind Stephen to Latrice permanently. On the night of January 29th, Reeves followed Latrice as she departed his residence. He used his position of authority as a respected minister to convince her to pull over on the shoulder of Interstate 540. There, he attacked her with a knife, stabbing her repeatedly before moving her vehicle further down the highway to delay discovery of the crime. On September 29, 2009, the trial of Robert Reeves began. The defense argued that Stephen Randolph was the more logical suspect, suggesting he wished to eliminate Latrice to protect his athletic career and avoid the consequences of an affair. They argued that the DNA under Latrice's fingernails belonged to Stephen and suggested that the pastor's DNA in the car was the result of harmless transfer from her visits to their shared home. The prosecution countered by pointing out that the DNA under her fingernails was easily explained by her consensual encounter with Stephen earlier that evening. In contrast, the presence of the pastor's DNA on her steering wheel, combined with the state trooper's identification of his car at the exact time and location of the murder, could not be dismissed. Furthermore, Stephen's testimony regarding the pastor's sexual advances and the telephone records proving Reeves was the source of the anonymous threats painted a clear picture of a desperate, obsessed individual. The jury deliberated for 2 days before returning a verdict of guilty of first-degree murder. Robert Reeves was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The case exposed the dark reality of a man who used his sacred standing in the community to mask a predatory and obsessive nature, leaving a young husband to mourn a life cut short by an act of senseless malice. Case Study 3: The Fractured Mind and the Fatal Ultimatum, the investigation of Wayne Irby and Denise Miller. In the quiet community of Little Elm, Texas, the winter of 2004 brought a sequence of events that would stun the local police department and result in a complex legal trial centered on the mysteries of human memory and psychological trauma. The crisis began at 6 in the morning on December 10th, 2004, when Officer Wayne Irby, a 6-year veteran of the Little Elm Police Department, failed to report for his morning shift. Wayne was an exemplary officer known for his dedication, his community presence, and his reliability. His absence without communication immediately raised concerns among his colleagues, particularly his partner, Jerry Walker. As the hours passed with no word from Wayne, Chief Waylon Rhodes dispatched officers to conduct a welfare check at the residence Wayne shared with his longtime girlfriend, Denise Miller, and her 2 teenage children. The house was locked, and there were no vehicles in the driveway. Investigators spoke with Denise's children, Walter and Whitney, who revealed that they had not seen their mother or Wayne since the previous day. Whitney recalled receiving a brief, unusual phone call from her mother around midnight, telling her she was running errands and expressing her love, which felt out of character. Seeking any sign of their colleague, Officer Jerry Walker and Officer James Wynn decided to check a rental property that Wayne had recently leased during a brief separation from Denise. Upon entering the residence, they discovered Wayne's personal telephone and fanny pack on the kitchen counter. Moving down the hallway, Officer Wynn discovered the body of Wayne Irby. He had been killed by a single gunshot wound to the back of his head. The loss of an officer sent shockwaves through the department. Given Wayne's role in law enforcement, investigators initially considered whether the killing was a retaliatory act related to his police duties. However, Wayne was widely regarded as a fair and diplomatic officer with no known professional enemies. The focus of the investigation quickly turned to his domestic life. Denise Miller was a 44-year-old divorced mother who had relocated to Texas from Kansas City, Missouri, seeking a fresh start. She had built a successful career in the liquor distribution industry and had purchased a beautiful home. Her relationship with Wayne, which began in 2003, was passionate but volatile. Denise struggled with deep-seated trust issues, frequently accusing Wayne of infidelity due to his outgoing personality and his popularity within the community. In December of 2003, a year prior to the murder, Denise had filed a domestic violence complaint against Wayne, claiming he had assaulted her after she discovered him with another woman at his rental home. She later withdrew the complaint, admitting she had exaggerated the incident out of anger. Despite their attempts to reconcile and buy a home together, the pattern of jealousy continued. By December of 2004, Wayne had decided to end the relationship permanently and was preparing to move back into his rental
property.
During a search of the couple's shared residence, investigators discovered a handwritten note from Denise. The note expressed deep emotional pain, suggesting she was contemplating ending her life. Furthermore, investigators noted that Wayne's uniforms remained in the closet, but his duty belt was empty, and his personal firearms were missing. On the kitchen island of Wayne's rental property, detectives discovered a second note in Denise's handwriting. It read, "I'm sorry I took both of our lives. Please contact our moms." This confession note strongly suggested a murder suicide plan, prompting an intensive search for Denise. At 4 a.m. on December 11, 2004, the police department in Gainesville, Texas, responded to a call from a local hotel.
A
night manager had reported a guest in distress. Upon forcing entry into the room, officers discovered Denise Miller lying on the floor, suffering from a self-inflicted gunshot wound to her head. Beside her, investigators recovered a .25 caliber handgun and Wayne's service weapon. It appeared Denise had initially attempted to load Wayne's service pistol, but had accidentally inserted a bullet backward, causing the mechanism to jam. She had then used the .25 caliber handgun, which belonged to her stepfather. Denise was rushed to a regional trauma center in critical condition.
She
survived the injury, but the bullet's path caused significant brain damage, resulting in partial paralysis, blindness in one eye, and profound cognitive impairment. Texas Ranger Tracy Murphy attempted to interview Denise at her bedside once she regained consciousness. To the frustration of investigators, Denise appeared to have no memory of the events, while she could recall details of her life prior to the shooting and recognized her children. She expressed genuine shock when informed that Wayne was dead and that she had shot herself. Medical professionals noted that the physical trauma to her brain, combined with the presence of alcohol and medication in her system, could indeed have induced psychogenic or organic amnesia, a defense mechanism where the mind blocks out a highly traumatic event. Despite her memory loss, the physical evidence against Denise was substantial. Ballistics confirmed that the bullet recovered from Wayne's head had been fired from the same .25 caliber handgun she used in the hotel room. Forensic testing also revealed that the trigger pull of the weapon required approximately 5 pounds of pressure, countering any potential claim that the gun had discharged accidentally. On January 18, 2005, Denise was formally charged with first-degree murder. Following months of intensive physical therapy and cognitive rehabilitation, she was declared legally competent to stand trial. The trial began on July 10, 2006, in Denton County. The prosecution presented Denise as a possessive partner who refused to accept the end of the relationship. They argued that she had traveled to Wayne's rental home with a loaded firearm, confronted him, and shot him in the back of the head when he turned his back to walk away. They emphasized her failure to call for medical assistance, her flight from the scene, and her written confessions as clear evidence of intent. The defense argued that the shooting was a tragic accident that occurred during a volatile emotional confrontation. They pointed to a third note found in her hotel room, which contained a line stating she had not meant to hurt Wayne and had panicked. They suggested that her state of mind was highly fractured and that she had not acted with premeditation. The jury deliberated for less than an hour before finding Denise Miller guilty of murder. During the sentencing phase, the jury took into account her severe physical disabilities resulting from her suicide attempt. While she was spared the death penalty, she was sentenced to 62 years in prison, ensuring she would spend the remainder of her life incarcerated. The tragedy of Wayne Irby's death and Denise Miller's subsequent conviction left two families devastated. It served as a somber demonstration of how unresolved jealousy and a refusal to let go of a failing relationship can escalate into irreversible violence, leaving investigators to uncover the truth of a crime that the perpetrator herself could no longer remember. Conclusion and reflections on justice. These three cases, though distinct in their settings and individuals, share a common thread of human frailty and the destructive pursuit of control. The resolution of each investigation stands as a testament to the meticulous, unbiased work of law enforcement officers, forensic scientists, and community advocates who refuse to let the truth remain hidden. Through systematic inquiry, the preservation of physical evidence, and a deep understanding of human psychology, justice was secured for Tanisha Stewart, Latrice Curtis, and Wayne Irby. These narratives offer profound lessons for communities, emphasizing the importance of recognizing the warning signs of obsessive behavior and domestic volatility. Ultimately, they reinforce the enduring truth that while violence may disrupt the peace of our communities, the systematic pursuit of justice remains a powerful force for healing, accountability, and the preservation of human dignity. The human mind remains one of the most complex frontiers in modern science, particularly when it is forced to confront the darker aspects of human behavior. As criminal psychology analysts and novelists, we often observe that the line between a peaceful, law-abiding life and a descent into tragedy is surprisingly thin. It is frequently constructed from fragile threads of trust, expectation, and the internal narratives that individuals construct about themselves and those they claim to love. When these narratives fracture under the weight of jealousy, obsession, or possessiveness, the results can be devastating. Yet, in the wake of such tragedies, the systematic and patient work of law enforcement, forensic scientists, and community members shines as a beacon of order. Their efforts remind us that while evil may briefly disrupt the social fabric, the collective human commitment to justice, truth, and empathy remains resilient. This narrative explores three distinct cases that occurred in different parts of the United States. Each case presents a unique psychological puzzle, a challenging forensic investigation, and a profound lesson about the nature of human relationships and the pursuit of justice. The illusion of possession and the tragedy of Tanisha Stewart. In the study of forensic psychology, we frequently encounter the destructive concept of pathologically distorted ownership. This occurs when one individual ceases to view their partner as an independent human being with autonomy, choosing instead to view them as a possession. When the perceived possession attempts to assert independence, the offender experiences a profound threat to their self-esteem, which can trigger a catastrophic escalation of control. Tanisha Stewart was, by all accounts, a young woman of exceptional promise.